Hello and welcome to Divine Grace. Today we are here to discuss with the much awaited transit, a heaved sigh of relief I would state for all of us, the time where Mars been getting into Aries that will be likely from the 10th of May until the 20th of the June. To very much precise, this had been one of the times where we all been confessing and been having that been the kind of transit which was been happening with Rahu. In particular, there had been so much of havoc, and while it was with Saturn, now the kind of intense situation which was been all out there in the Southwest Asia, we all had been having this all before us. Now I would state this kind of the transit which is going to here onwards, roughly from this June onwards, it would be relatively smooth for the world and all us a human being for the kind of times which are going to see. In particular, as it is the transit will be having a kind for a brief period in conjunction with Sun, which is also exalted in this current sign of Aries, and very soon towards the June, while the Jupiter the kind of the transit which is going to be the sign of exaltation. So those are very soon are likely to happen. So I would state the time has started for us a much of a relief. Well, without much of time, let's start with our kind of prediction for all the 12 signs. To understand the Mars transit, it is primarily we need to know, as per the Vedic literature, the sign, the movement, I would say the transit from the natal moon, that is the 3rd, the 6th and the 11th, usually is a kind of success whenever planet as Mars does makes its own movement. Now, if I would state in our current day, it is because of the Stankal and the Paristiti, it is where we used to go via the ascendant for the better understanding. Well, let's try and move on the first sign. The very first is Aries. For Aries natives, this is happening in the first house. As stated, it is more likely the kind of intense time, while the turbulence it was with the Rahu, followed by it had been from the 11th. Now then after it went to the 12th with Saturn, for a period of time. Now back into the own sign, the much awaited, I would say, recognition, accolades, the promotion, all the benefits, the monetary perks, everything which you had been envisaging for a period of time was being halted, is now going to bring the kind of terms and coming as the flying colors, I would state to say. In particular, the effect, the aspect of Mars to the 4th house, where very soon also Jupiter is going to getting exalted. Well, it is going to bring all the kinds of expectations, the kind of interest which you had been longing for is going to be getting fulfilled. Never to forget, Mars is also your ascendant lord, so this is literally a time to come where you are going to take it as a much endeavored success, coming with flying colors. Your success comes to the kind of interface where you have been looking for. Well, this is how it does work. For the Taurus ascendant, well, if we understand Mars, which does transits for you as the 12th house. For the 12th house, it had been as likely, in conjunction with Rahu in the 10th, then after with the 11th, it was with Saturn. Well, all the kind of intense states. Now it is in the 12th house. Reasonably, if we state the 12th house transit is much better in contrast with Rahu and in contrast with the kind of transit while it was with Saturn. And the good thing is if you had been in particular the things which could be had undertaken in the terms of the kind of any kind of anticipation from the foreign lands, any kind of the travel to foreign lands or any kind of fulfillment which has been associated with the foreign lands, this 12th house transit is likely going to bring those kind of success. You would be instrumental in all of your kind of endeavors in this particular area. area. Again, if I would state like the 4th, 7th and for the 8th aspects of the Mars to the 3rd house, where it is likely to help you for the kind of for the visa related things, while for the travel and all. The 5th, where it does supports in getting the kind of the affluentness, the kind of like success in the kind of dealing with the people in particular. However, the 8th aspect does falls in the 7th of the house. There it is likely you need to be very much particular, like all the expenses which are been likely to happen, you are going to be very much careful for the foreign lands, because it is quite genuine, there is endeavors are going to having the relative success, but there could be expenses because of the association of the 12th house. You need to be very much particular about the the financial front. There could be losses which could be incurred for the time, if any kind of frivolous or reckless investment is been done for any kind of entities which has been associated for the foreign lands and all. But apart of this should be reasonably kind of okay of the two of the aspects which Mars does goes by. This is relatively, I would state, a better transit in contrast to the last two of the kinds of transit of Mars which had been going through. For the Gemini ascendant and for the moon sign, this is happening in the 11th house. As we stated, 11th house transit is always marked with the amount of success, and it is pious for any kind of undertakings whichever it has been taken for, with the various of the previous of the two instances of the transit where Mars it was with. This is reasonably at a much better, I would state. If you take it for any kind of elevation, any anticipation for any elevation in your prospects, if you are been getting into for any kind of promotion, any kind of expansion in your network and also in your growth, in all the areas it is likely to be successful. The thing which has to be taken into consideration is Mars is not a very yogakaraka planet for the Geminians. So the emphasis of the success is likely, but not at the pace and the magnitude which it has supposed to be, as you've been over a period of time been expecting. That is all I can state. So the aspects, if I would take it up into the 4th house at the home front, or any investments which have been done into the land, any kind of lawsuits which have been filed, in all those areas there is a greater amount of success. To the 5th house, you are going to come up with the flying colors if any competition if you are undertaking. If I would take about the 8th aspect, so that is goes where it does happens to be more likely you are going to sketch off all of your enemies during this kind of time. You are going to destroy your enemies. That is all. It comes up with a greater amount of relief. So in some way or the other, it is going to be a good transit. Only case has to be taken into consideration is the magnitude should be kept reasonable to one itself for the Geminians. For the Cancer natives, this transit has been happening in the 10th house, being a 10th house lord, which was been under severe stress and kind of a impression which was been built upon from all of your competitors and also from all of your undertakings which you had been taking while it was with in the 8th house with Rahu and the 9th house with Saturn, is now to a pretty much extent you are going to heave a sigh of relief, because the 10th house lord is in the 10th house. You are going to come up with all of your flying colors. All your efforts have been coming into a sweet success. If we try to know it is a yogakaraka planet for the Cancer natives, Mars is all about, and also it is it's a Mahapurush yoga. So that is where it gives you the kind of prospect of coming with the flying colors. If we talk about the straight effect of the Mars which goes into your 4th house, the same where it about to know the kind of investments which you had been doing, or if you have done into the home, property, real estate, is all going to come up with a much relief, with a much amount of success. And also if you are going to be any kind of if I talk about the straight effect into also your 4th house, there in particular you are going to come up with resolution of any kind of deals which had been pending for any kind of property transaction, that you are going to be successful. Only caution has to be taken care if it is on the 8th house effect the 8th house aspect to in that particular case to your 5th house, you have to be very much careful for your progeny or any kind of children if you have been expecting. So that is something which has to be taken care. Yeah, apart of this, I could see there is professional elevation, there is rise of income level, everything comes into a much more beyond your the magnitude which you had been expecting, beyond your kind of imagination. It is going to come up with all of a big boost, with all of a big kind of anticipation before you. So it is all in cahoots to your to your expectations which you can expect for the Leo natives. And for the ascendant moon sign, this transit is been happening in the 9th house. A 9th house transit of the, I would say, as the 9th lord and the 4th lord happening in the 9th house is the fortune which is been completely in the slow burner over a period of time in the previous of the 2 transits. The good thing is whenever the kind of the much needed breakthrough which was been expected, it is been coming into forefront. This is what it has been happening for the Leo natives, I would state. It is a Yogakaraka planet, genuinely. Mars as for the Leo natives. If we talk about the aspect, the very first of the aspect which goes primarily into the kind of the 4th house, it is where any kind of if there could be disruptions in the 4th house in particular. If you are been expecting in the family front, if there is kind of feud which is happening with your family or anyone within any of the relationship, that is where it does impact. If I would talk about the 12th house, where it also have the aspect, it is good for the foreign travels or any kind of if you are taking any kind of assignment for the foreign land. If I talk about the aspect into the 3rd house, that is much likely the kind of travel, a short travel, or it could be the visas which could be related. This all goes successful. Only the 4th house aspect has to be taken care, because there it brings the kind of disruption. Well, this is reasonably a very good transit for the Leo natives, I would state, for the Mars transit. For the Virgo natives, how this transit it would be? Well, this has been happening in the 8th house. Well, 8th house transit is not a very supportive time, a conducive one. Well, the transit which is been marked mostly, I would state, the transformation, particularly for the 8th house, there it brings it dimensionally. You are going to go about reviewing all of your works, the endeavors which you had did it with unprecision, how relevant it would be. That kind of transformation in your career or anything, the kind of undertaking which you are being dealt with also the business prospect and all, you are going to ponder there with a lot of care. As a 3rd house lord, this is where it has been transiting into the 8th house. So if I would take any kind of efforts which have been put on, is going to come up with sweet success in the interest of time, as Rahu, which is likely to get into the Dhanishta, that is in the month of June. I had got a video, you can watch it up, how it does works on for you. Even the Saturn, which is in the 7th house, and I would say elevation of the coming to the sign of exaltation at Cancer, where the Jupiter transit which happens. So this all gives you the kinds of the stage where you can coming up with a much more with the flying colors, with the much more success accolades. But it is a kind of transformative journey. It won't be a very cheesy way, the moonwalk which you are been anticipation, if you are with any kind of anticipation and all. Yeah, this is how it does work. For the Gemini natives, how this transit it would be? It would be literally happening in the 7th house. The 7th house transit is reasonably good. Being the 2nd house lord and the 7th house lord, it has been transiting in the 7th house. Well, that is literally a kind of respite, if I would talk in the terms of the business undertakings. Being a 2nd house lord, while in the transit at the 5th house, where it was with Rahu, all the wrong decisions which have been undertaken during that part of time. Even at the 6th house transit with Saturn, where the rift in any kind of relationships which was been all down there, time to relieve now. It is I would say, you can heave a sigh of success now, while it is currently in the 7th house. All those kind of you are going to rebuild those ties, those comes into fructification in this particular kind of transit in the 7th house. The kinds of the aspects which it does gives morely into the kind of this relationship as well as the kind of the kind of business endeavors all comes into success. The only thing which I would say, like for the 8th house aspect, which goes primarily to your romantic relationship, there could be the cases where there could be a kind of urge, whenever you do have any kind of the feelings which comes morely as being an opposite sex, there is where the only kind of concern you might not be able to get into the fulfillment because of the kind of transits which has been happening, because of the deeds which are for the business and the deeds which comes off in the signing of the business deals. All this success begins to come as overshadowing your relationship. So that is only one area I would say as a concern one needs to take care for. All the Scorpio natives, how this transit it would be, being the first house lord and the 6th house lord, it has been transiting in the 6th house. So well, it is a much respite while you come up with the winning over your enemies, all the kind of competition. If it has been lined up, you are going to come up with the desired amount of success. Any kind of the pendency of the kinds of cases which have been against you are coming up with the in your favor. So in all those kind of any kind of anticipation of any kind of also promotion, over a period of time, that can be also come with a kind of dim amount of success. Well, the only thing is what has to be taken care is whenever the aspects, if we talk about the aspect to the 12th house, if you are going to know about your any kind of foreign investment or any kind of foreign undertakings, if you are taking any assignment at the foreign lands you are going to take, that is going to be reasonably good. If I would talk about the 9th house aspect, that also is reasonable, because by this particular time fortune is at your side and you have been going to favorable, you are going to be deemed to be a favorable prospectus if you are looking for any kind of for foreign any kind of foreign aspects and for any kind of endeavors in the foreign lands and all. The only thing where it does comes the aspect on the first house, that first house comes as a 8th house aspect, where this in particular you need to get yourself refrained from any kind of anger, any kind of ensuring the very minimum, if you discuss the things which not supposed to be not to brood yourself more into any kind of manner which might feel someone else as offensive. So those all things has to be taken care, because of the 8th aspect into the first house. Reasonably, this is a much kind of a sigh of relief kind of transit for the Scorpio natives. Sagittarius natives, this transit is happening in the 5th house. 5th house is primarily known as the Lakshmi Sthana, and a Yoga Karaka planet like for Sagittarius, Mars is one. While it makes the kind of transit, it gives boost to your academics, your forefront of the any kind of fine arts, any kind of aspects morely. If you are looking for any kind of promotion, accolades, all comes into forefront because of a 5th house. Any kind of wisdom which you carry for your progeny, children, all this comes into place. Now the only thing which it happens is the kind of elevation, I would state again, the exaltation of the your ascendant lord, that is Jupiter, which is very soon going into the 8th house of up into the Cancer, there where it brings the kind of desired transformation. Again, because of this, I would state the 5th house the transition which is been transit which will be happening this particularly also because it is 8th from the 10th house, so any kind of career transformation is likely to happen, but this transformation is for your good and well did. If I would state from the the drishtis or the aspects, it does gives into the aspect of into the for the joint resources, you are going to come up with a flying colors into the 8th house. If also it is something, if I talk about the 11th house, gains from the all the undertakings which over you have been expecting for the time which it is been currently, but transformation is always there on the cards. And also if I talk about the very 12th house, there you need to be taking care the enemies, morely the inimical relationship. If it was with any kind of hidden agenda earlier which you are not able to unveil, right now it is coming to forefront, you would be able to figure it out, who are the people who were behind the scenes. Those all kind of exposure of the enemies comes into, I would state it is one of the best of the transits you can expect for being as a yoga karaka planet in the 5th house. Capricorn natives, this transit is happening being the 11th house lord, happening in the 4th house. 4th house is always known as one of the best of the transit whenever a Mars like planet, so it is related to any kind of investments. If it has been done for the finance, banking, or any kind of construction, or any kind of sale of land, or with all this kind of investments, this is going to be coming into the sweet success. The harmony which is been out here shouldn't reflect in your tongue, that is where the 2nd house, and also it is more likely it shouldn't reflect in your relationship. That is the 2 areas which I could see it is going to be giving the kind of less spoken impact, I would rather say. So that shouldn't cloud your the goodness of your personality as a whole. That shouldn't reflect out there. Other than that, if I would say this all as a 4th house transit, the aspects, if I would talk about the 4th and the straight, and also the 8th house impact into the 7th house, or if I would say about the 10th house as well as the 11th house, being the 11th house lord. So this is literally one of the best of the transit, I would say, for the Capricorn and natives. Again, if I would reveal this is going to give a fortune to you after this transit. Mark my words, after any kind of if you are in anticipation of with getting into any purchase of any flat, apartment, this is going to be one of the very good of the kind of transit you can expect. For the Aquarius natives, this is reasonably a very good transit, I would state, being the 10th house lord in the 3rd house. So where it does clearly states if you had been refraining from taking any kind of leap in your career, you are taking a step back because of the previous of the 2 transits happening in the 1st house, I would state while it was with Rahu in conjunction, if it has been impacted anyway of your your presence, which was not been getting well with your superiors and with your management as a whole. If I would talk about the 2nd house, it could be the purview of your management for because of a speech and all. This is all been going to vanish away. It is completely crossing out this part of time. You can expect this would be the time while you can take a leap with a kind of grit and determination, and you are going to come up with success because of this 3rd house transit. And again, in particular, if I would state all the aspects whichever it has been concerned, the 4th, the self aspect as well as the 8th aspect, in this particular case, only thing it has to be taken care never ever to engage with any kind of vulgar any kind of any verbal arguments, because of the previous of the 2 transits while it was with the sun as well as with Saturn of the 2nd house, because that has got the impact. But this transit, because which is going to be a successful transit, that should never come in between of that. So this is going to be a successful endeavor coming up with flying colors and with sweet success. Only thing that has to be taken care, your speech which has to be taken care, because you have faced the times while it had been went not on your way. That shouldn't reflect in your current point of proving yourself for any kind of, if it has been there. So it is likely going to decimate your enemies. But this is also a good time for all those who are in the the medias, the the real estate, in all of the fields, I would say, the sporting, the defense. It is going to be one of the best of the transit for much of the things. Capricorn and Aquarius literally are 2 of the very best of the signs where it is going to make a very good kind of transit, I would say, for this Mars transit. The Pisces natives, this has been happening in the 2nd house. Well, being as a 9th house lord, and again a yoga karaka for planet as Mars, for because of a Jupiterian sign, so this is going to be one of the good of the transits. Because if I would say the 2nd house transit, 2nd house is nothing but your speech. It is how you present you to the outside world. How does the world begins to preview, and when there is an association of a greater dream of success which comes as fortune in the terms whenever the 9th house lord coming in the 2nd house, so that is going to give you the much and much desired breakthrough which you had been endeavoring in the finances for or any kind of undertakings, whether it is where you have got your investments which were been quelled off by your enemies for a period of time is right now going to come into fructification, I would say. Like nothing can stop your movement because of a second house transit. This is literally going to be coming up with, like, no, every kind of success is been going to be getting counted. All the aspects for the Mars, I would say, even including the 8th aspect, is also going to be desirable whenever the Pisces sign is been currently conjunct. So this is always a good transit, I would say. Like, count your blessings if it had been going good, if of the previous of the 2 transit, while it was with the 12th in the Rahu. So there could be the kinds of disputes if you had been into any kind of any kind of investment. If it wasn't done, it had been counting losses out there in the first house while it was with Saturn. Well, that was never supposed to be because of the first house. It is again in the second house, heaved a sigh of relief. You are going to come up with flying colors because of the second house transits. Cheers. Hope you like this. Keep me a shout, and yeah, like, share and subscribe.